I got my dear old buddy here, Jack McClure. And I'll tell you, this guy, he looks like, real normal, kind of retired guy, kind of, laid back. But I want to tell you something. Jack, in his younger days, he was a real whippersnapper, they would say. But they used to say whippersnapper back in your day?
I don't know. They use that term.
Yeah. Well, the hillbillies, what do the hillbillies say?
Well, the hillbillies just called you a couple of names we can't say now.
Oh, well, anyways, the reason I even go in this area is tell us, the years that you're out there actually bootlegging and how you got into NASCAR and how that all came about.
Well, I really never was a bootlegger.
Okay.
I just hauled the product down the road that the bootleggers bootleg.
So what do they call that then?
Well, they call it running moonshine.
Moonshine Runner. That's what I was looking at. Oh, so that's the difference. I always thought it was the same thing. But so you're just a runner for them.
Yeah. But the funny thing about that is I started doing it when I was only about 14 or 15 years, before I even had a driver's license to drive a car. They let me drive the car from the whiskey still down to the road.
Yeah.
To load on to the road car. Well, those guys that drove the road car, they were the superstars of our area up there.
Yeah.
Anybody could drive a car loaded with liquor and outrun everybody. They were, like a superstar.
Yeah, they're like race car drivers.
Yeah, race car drivers.
Yeah, exactly.
So I got to start doing that around 14 or 15 years old, and finally graduated up to where I was promoted to the road car.
Yeah.
And that's where the fun began. And this is in the mountains and the hills of North Carolina, western North Carolina.
Yeah.
Around Haywood County, Cherokee, North Carolina, and up in there. But everybody was in some way connected with the bootlegging business. Either the guys that run it and made it, or the guys that drove the car, or the guys that sold it, or the politicians and the police force that were taking the money on the side to look the other way as you're coming down the highway.
And there was users out there too.
A lot of them, yeah.
Everybody liked a little moonshine, probably because it was against the law, just probably tasted it.
Well, it was against the law,
yeah.
But everybody did it. I mean, they never thought anything about it. Now, fast forward up to about 30 years ago when I got into the boat business down in Florida, bringing illegal products in, like smuggling drugs and marijuana and stuff like that. We frowned on that.
Yeah.
But that's the same as we used to do bootlegging. Everybody had to do something to make a living.
Yeah, but that didn't really hurt anybody. Like what the bootlegging, it was for entertainment. And these speakeasies they used to have. And, but they were the good old people that were doing that. They were the good old boys, the good old people. I remember one time you were telling me a story about how a woman had invited you in for a chicken dinner. Tell us about that a little bit.
Well, not necessarily a woman, but anybody. You go out to pick up a load.
Yeah.
And you pull the car up in the driveway, and you get out and go in. The first thing they want to know, this is customary up in the mountains.
Yeah.
When they get a guest, they want to know, are you hungry?
Yeah.
If you're hungry, and you say, yeah, I'm hungry, I'd like to have something, they'd run out in the front yard, grab a chicken and wring its neck, and before you know, you'd have fried chicken on the table.
Yeah. Well, that's good people, the good old boys.
Good people.
And then didn't that just turn into NASCAR racing? The people who were doing the runners and all that?
Well, yes, it did. The people that drove the road cars, we used to get out and race each other on the road.
Yeah.
And then a guy named Bill France, Sr.,
I know
he got an idea. He said, we ought to get together with these guys here, put them on a racetrack, and charge people to come and see it. Mm-hmm. And that's the birth of NASCAR. And my first NASCAR racer was a 1939 Ford Coupe. That was a hot setup back then.
Well, I owned a 1940, a couple of the coupes. They're pretty cool cars.
1940 was my road car that I ran.
Oh.
I had a 41. And they, it started from there. And the class I ran in was the sportsman class. And in that race, now I never did win any races, but I was always there. I was a local favorite. Had a lot of people that rooted for me. And I ran all over the Southeast, up in North Carolina, Georgia, South Carolina. And I ran against some of the real frontier guys with NASCAR. Like, everybody loves Earnhardt.
Oh, yeah.
Well, Ralph Earnhardt was the daddy.
The daddy, yes.
He was the and he wound up being the granddaddy. He was Dale's father and Dale Jr.'s grandfather. But I run with him a lot of times. Never to beat him.
Yeah.
But he won more races than anybody else along during my time there. And then they said, we're going to start a strictly stock race.
Yeah.
Bring it off the street and you can run it. And I was looking for a car, and that's back during the days, this is in the late 40s, early 50s. There was a local Kaiser Fraser car dealer.
Yeah.
A lot of people never heard of a Kaiser Fraser.
No.
But you remember the Kaiser
Oh, of course,
Fraser.
of course.
They made a little car. The first compact car that I remember ever being out on the road was called a Henry J.
Yeah, Henry J. Very familiar.
People call them Henry Juniors, but that's not, there was a Henry J, the
right.
letter J. And the local dealer, he said, I got this one that a guy rode, but it's good, you could have it. So he gave me a brand new bent up. We straightened it out, painted it white, and I ran it a couple of years on all the short tracks around there. And then a lot of the big guys got into it, and Keith Kafer, the Mercury outboard man, he got into it. He's the first, Carl Keith Kafer is the first person that I know of that ever had a multi-team car. He ran 3 Chrysler 300s back then with the genuine Hemi motors. And he had the Flock boys driving. Fonny Flock, Tim Flock, and Bob Flock drove for him. A lot of other people drove for him. But when that happened, I kind of got away from it because it took a lot of money to keep up with it. And back then, sponsorship was hard to get. And you had to go with whatever money you won or whatever money the track would give you. Back then, most tracks would give you what they call tow money. You could get as high as $50, $75 for towing your car. But back then, that was 2-3 weeks work. You know, $75. You know? But then, in the late 50s, around 58, 59, a thing called a go-kart was born out in California. 4 wheels, a motor, and a little steering wheel. We used to make them up in the mountains. But we had a board.
We called them chugs. We made them out 2x4s and motors off the wash machine and belts with an overthrown clutch for the board and a rope and steered with the 2 feet and the rope and nobody knows how to make them anymore.
And the brake, you know what the brakes were? You 2 feet.
Well, or you got to stick to it.
Anyway, the go-karts came along, and I said, you know, that's pretty interesting. And I got to playing around with one. And the next thing I know, 4 or 5 years later, I'm in the business, a distributor for Rupp's dart carts in North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida, and Georgia. And I got to going fast in a go-kart. So.
And you did good too. I read some of the articles and trophies, and you became very good.
And, you know, I'm the first person on record to break 100 miles an hour in a go-kart.
Oh, wow.
On a drag strip, you know.
Oh, yeah. Tell us a little bit about those. I mean, you know, it's one thing to put one motor on, then you got 2 motors, and then you got 3 motors, and there's more. So tell us more.
Well, the first car I took to a drag strip had 2 motors on it. And I ran it down. I ran 100 miles an hour in a quarter mile an hour.
What kind of motors were they, by the way?
They were West Bend.
West Bend,
yeah.
They're very popular.
And the number of West Bend 820s. So I run it, and I forgot all about it, and about 2 or 3 weeks later, one night, there's a car with 4 guys in it trying to pull me over. I was driving down the main street there in Columbia, and I was afraid to pull over because I didn't know what they wanted or what they were going to do. Because I was still piddling around over here going fast with some moonshine back here. And finally, at a traffic light, one of them run up and said, "Are you the one who brought that go-kart down to Orangeburg?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Hey, we'll pull over, we want to talk to you." He said, "Manager down there wants to bring you back." He said, "He wants you to bring that thing back down there." He said, "If you come back down and run again, he will give you a trophy." I said, "Trophy?" I said, "I got a room full of them at home." I said, "They're no good." I said, "How about some money?" So we managed to get $25 for the first appearance paid on a drag strip with a go-kart.
You're probably one of the first guys ever to get paid. First professional.
So then, after a couple runs, that's when the super stocks came up. The Chevys and the Dodges and the Fords. And I asked the guy, I said, the promoter down there, I said, "What would you pay me if I had a go-kart that would run with these super stocks?" And he said, he said, $100.
Wow.
So I said, $100. So I go back and during that week, I put 2 more motors on.
So now you got 4.
Now I got 4. So then I ran with the superstars. And then I got an idea, put 2 more on it.
So now we're up to 6.
Now we're up to half a dozen. 6. But it turned out to be too much power and too much weight on the back end. It would do, so I went back to the 4 motors. Then the next thing that happened, I'm looking for more speed. And I had a racing magazine. And I looked in there and there was an ad from a company in Orlando, Florida that had turbine engines and rocket motors. And I thought, well, that ought to work, we go down. So I get in touch with the guy.
That's Turbo Neat, by the way.
Oh, that was Turbo Neat. Turbo Neat.
I think, the same here. That's what caught my eye. Gene Middlebrooks.
You set off with one too?
Oh, yes. I ended up 2 of the T16s.
So anyway, the next thing that happened, I go down and he said, one of these little rocket motors. So we put it on the go-kart. I took it up to Georgia and I was kind of late getting in there. I was booked in with the 4-engine car. And I said, I want to run this. So it didn't run as fast as the 4-engine car. So the promoter, he didn't like that. He said, you better unload that 4-engine car out here if you want to get paid. So I did. And the next Monday, the day after that, I'm back down in Orlando, and we put another one side by side, 2 of them. This time we got some. We're running 150 and a quarter.
And that's fast back then.
Oh,
very fast.
Unheard of. A lot of publicity on it, and everybody thought, all over the world thought, well, that guy is either crazy or got a death wish or something like that. I ran that for about 3-4 years. Well, 3 years, I guess. And I was lucky enough to run into the Chitwood family. Down in Florida. And we kind of conned Chitwood Jr. into running against me with his super stock car. And of course, there was no race to it. Boom, I was gone. He said, Junior said, what happened? What happened? He said, I look up. He said, I'm down here shifting gears. He said, I look up and you're coming back the other way. You went down and made a U-turn and come back at me. I said, yeah. So they fell in love with it, me and the go-kart. So at the time they were, well, Chevrolet all the way. At the time, Chevrolet had a little promotion go-kart out. It was called a Monza Junior. A little body on it.
I remember, like a little Corvette kind of like.
And they wanted my go-kart. to put one of these bodies on.
Right.
So we did it. And in turn for that, going back to turbinate, they had built this big turbine engine that rolled it onto the back axle.
Right.
And I'm looking at that thing and I'm thinking, I want one of them. So I told Chitwood Sr., I said, I need a car to put this in. And he just took delivery of a brand new Z16 Chevelle.
Oh, yeah.
He said, you can have that one.
Yep.
Unbeknown what it was.
Rare. No, those things are really rare, as a matter of fact.
So anyway, we got that to running, and we finally got it down in the 8s at 162 miles an hour. And I ran that thing for about almost a year. And up in Atlanta, Georgia, on a Saturday night at a drag strip, the rear end locked up right in the clocks at 160 something.
Yeah.
And barrel rolled, so we demolished that.
Yeah, that was how a number of them ended.
Yeah. So the next thing I do, Chitwood says, well, you wrecked the car, what are we going to do now? I said, well, I don't know. He said, you want to go to work for me? I said, doing what? He said, working in the show, but the main thing is driving one of our trucks.
Yeah.
So I did that for 4 years and went in the show and worked. I didn't do any of this crashing because I told him, I said, look, I'm already graduated from crashing cars.
Oh, wait.
I don't need.
They dressed you up like a clown, though, one time.
Well, one time.
Yeah, you're not going to skip that.
Well, the reason they did, they were doing a show for ABC Wide World of Sport.
Yeah, okay.
There were 3 thrill shows in that. There was Chitwood, there was the Hurricane thrill show, and there was Cochran.
Yeah.
And they wanted to do a little clown act with this little
Monster,
Junior.
yeah, right.
They wanted me to drive it.
Yeah.
Well, messing with the 4-engine car, part of my act is when I'd come back down to the drug truck about 100 miles an hour, I'd do a 360.
Yeah.
So they knew I could do that, and they wanted me to do that with that, that little Monster Junior. So they dressed me up like a clown. And but I stayed with them, and we worked on a lot of movies and a lot of commercials for a lot of insurance companies. And finally I said, well, I got enough of this. I'm going fishing again.
Yeah.
So I had my charter boat business, and in 1969, late 69, early 70, they had a street race, a go-kart street race.